Welcome, my dear friends. It's good to see you again. I'm Stephen Clements, a writer, a gamer, and an appreciator of big brain activities in general. On this channel, I perform dramatic story readings, I provide role-playing game and movie reviews, and I get to talk to interesting people. And in this episode, we're going to continue a dramatic reading of an interesting person's autobiography. That's none other than Call Me Tennessee by Jeff Klitzner, my crazed Jewish hobo friend. And if you find this work interesting, this is available on Amazon.com. And so if you haven't seen episodes 1 and 2 of this series, you may want to, because it'll help fill out what's going on. But then again, this is a stream of consciousness experience. Feel free to just hop on in and see where the reading takes you. So, we left off in chapter 6, and now we're picking up in chapter 7, Sophomore Blues. Now, this year was important in my development, because this is when I first met my boy Bob, who, no matter what, I got his back and I know he's got mine. Second, I got Lunchbox to move up to Jonesboro and go to A-State with me, but both of them have helped me on in my years, and even still today. This was one of those years where I really came out of my shell. My radio production class was fun, and I would torment my professor with back-to-back Clapton, followed by Garth Brooks, and end it all with a splash of Rufus Thomas's version of Walkin' the Dog. If you don't know it, learn it. Props to Stax Music for all the hits. Anyway, I excelled in classes where I could express my thoughts and get away with opinionated rants. I also had a teacher who told me that if you don't show up, you'll never pass. To prove a point, I didn't show up, and I got a C- in the class. I had my pick of stories at the paper, and the radio station gave me the 4 a.m. shift, so I did it all. It was a non-profit classical station, so I had issues staying awake. I never got tired of slipping some Clapton or Santana into the mix with all the violins and French horns past the programming director. I had good fun, but the times were a-changin', and so were the politics. I recall joking in 2000 about learning how to fly an airplane like one of those old Russian jets, and learned just enough to take off and eject before ramming it into the damn library. What can I say? I was ahead of my time. I began picking up bad habits, like smoking cigarettes and sleeping instead of going to class, but the parties were great. I worked in Memphis on the weekends, putting in 40-plus hours and then driving back for class. That made life interesting. I heard a song one day, and it made sense to me. Then I read a quote of the writer, and I understood more than I should. Yes, I am the walrus. Respect. Sorry, I don't remember much of this year. That's the bad part of alcohol and living the life of a rock star without the fortune and fame. Life got to be more of a puzzle, and I had to lie to a few professors to get my straight A's, what with putting in 40 hours worth of work in 2 days in Memphis, working the graveyard shift at a radio station, and doing the newspaper thing. Meanwhile, one of my classes had a girl who was part Indian, feather, not dot variety. She played basketball, so we knew each other on a professional basis, so to speak. I had dyed my hair blonde one day, but it turned out rather orange, and when combined with the fact that I was 200 pounds overweight, she laughed at me. So I challenged her to a game of one-on-one. How was I supposed to know that her friends, teammates, and coaches would show up and be cheering her on? I figured it was going to be quiet, just me and her. I got beat in 3 straight games, and then I said, okay, this was for all the marbles. Did I mention this girl was close to 6'4", and my 6-foot fat ass was 3 minutes from a heart attack? I stepped it up and did what I knew how to do. I took the ball first and nailed 5 shots in a row, then somehow managed to steal and got a layup, at which point the coach asked if I would wear a dress to get on his team. Then I went for it, hitting my flat-footed jumpers, winning the last match. Maybe it was pity on her part for the sweaty, wobbling fat ass about to die on the court with her, but I won, and I took the victory, damn it. I miss those girls and boys from the basketball teams. They wore their chips on their shoulders, and you couldn't take it from them. Meanwhile, I'd run for a position on the Residence Hall Association and won. After enough people quit, I had the job of being the national rep for Arkansas State. There was a conference in Tulsa where the night before elections, I stayed up all night planning a coup to make sure the current president running for re-election would know she had problems. I did the statesman-like thing, argued until my throat hurt, and then let another speak. I was really trying to get this other chick elected because she seemed cool and she bought me beer. I figured it was the least that I could do. My attempt failed, but not as bad as you might think. I managed to get her elected as vice president after brokering an agreement with the president. I kept dyeing my hair and running around like a chicken with my head cut off. I was on the Residence Hall Association Board, the secretary of my fraternity, a staff reporter, interning at the radio station on campus, working at the bookstore, and at a hotel in Memphis. Did I mention a full class load? Parties, papers, radio, and a lot of coffee. Oh yeah, I forgot to mention that I'm dyslexic and really hate reading. I developed my own style of learning, which has a lot more to do with relating to the professor's views and less with reading. I never understood the need to reference in essays, because I prefer the power of individual thought and coming to your own conclusions through whatever means necessary. Who cares that somebody else said something? What the hell do they know? How I maintained my sanity is the wrong question to ask. You should ask if I was ever sane. Oh yeah, I also mastered Diablo 1 for all you video game freaks out there. Respect. I made my way through that year, working school activities, going through the motions. For me, it was fun to a point, but eventually I came to the realization that life at this school wouldn't help me much. Maybe it was when I saw a friend who had a graduate degree stocking shelves at Walmart, but I realized that I needed a more academically centered university. I'd been there 2 long years, and my heart wasn't into conning my professors for the grades I wanted anymore. I actually had 2 professors that taught me more about life than any others would. Mr. Fowlers and Mrs. Rogers, who had a knack for a good story or two, while Mr. Fowlers had a knack for making the book come alive. Also, Dr. Robertson knew more than I ever could about media, and we agreed in principle that P.T. Barnum was the godfather of public relations. Yeah, Hearst had his moments, but let's face it, when the circus came to town, you're going for no other reason than to be entertained. At this time, I also fell in love with this stuff called folk rock. Cat Stevens' Another Saturday hit me in ways that I never thought it could be done. Boy, did I ever enjoy life right then. My brother just had a baby girl named Candace, and I took her with me to buy a present one time. She tried to buy clothes. I bought her an Easter bunny. The baby loved it, and my life was looking up and down at the same time. It's an odd concept, really. But getting back to college, I got back on the asshole wagon by pulling pranks all over the place. Now I had reasons for all the pranks I pulled, whether it was sticking a rat under the door of the dorm director's apartment or refusing to name who the unishitter was, capital U, capital S, unishitter, or turning the shower head so they'd fall off when turned on, or placing catfish stink bait in random shampoo bottles. It's a real blast watching people's faces when they catch a whiff of the dude walking past them who's thinking other people are to blame, since he just showered. But I'm sure by now you're saying, whoa, Jeff, you can't bring up someone called the unishitter without explaining that one. Okay, fine. So the unishitter, like the Unabomber before him, would drop a load in the shower, and it varied which bathroom would be the scene of the crime day by day. The guys in the residence hall set up a sting operation and failed to catch him. In fact, I was a suspect at one time. But let's face it, the bathrooms were condemnable anyway. So if the man wanted to shit in the shower, who am I to tell him not to? A lot of things went wrong that semester, but my collection of parking cones grew as the campus cops tried to block parking spots in order to put in meters. I just took all the cones and put them in my trunk. Sticking it to the man became harder and harder under the watchful eyes of the local authorities. I started a unique uprising when my column about how nasty the dormitories were came out. I made enemies, and somehow the financial aid department magically started losing documents of mine that they already had on file, like my selective service registration and social security card. You know, stuff I had to have to get financial aid so I could keep going to college. Some systems are meant to drive men mad, and they work. I'm not much for sentimental things like pictures, but I will say that I remember everything, and I just need some mental jogging from time to time. Writing is best done with a hangover, and let's be honest here, drunks always have the best stories to tell. Chapter 8, Junior Year. So it began much like the year before, except I was working even more hours in Memphis at a fancy hotel on weekends. I had a Tuesday through Thursday class schedule, and, well, being that age and just working nights, I started getting strange requests and noticing certain females coming in and out at weird hours. Soon, I started getting referral fees for my recommendations. Then other requests came in from younger guests for certain plants and chemicals. I soon made a lot of new friends. After a little while, I had to stop and ask myself, why would anybody start doing this type of stuff? In the words of the great poets of Warren G. and Mac 10, this world is built on material things, but we ain't tripping off that. We want y'all to know this, check it. I want it all. Money, fast cars, diamond rings, gold chains, and champagne. Shit, every damn thing. So I, like most people brought up in poverty, started slinging. Nothing big, just a dime bag here and a quarter there. I usually just made a phone call here and a phone call there and a pickup or drop off. I was making $7.50 an hour for like 40 hours a week, and I was bringing in close to $400 in tips every weekend. I paid off my car quick. Credit cards were no problem because I had no need. I carried cash. I started taking my mind off my studies for a while, and then, bars, strip clubs, and some smoke. The rest I was just pissing away. So I realized my micro and macro professors were idiots, and I started to flunk a few classes. I looked at my roommate lunchbox and said, "Bro, I'm tired of this place. I want to transfer to the University of Memphis." Just like that, we changed over. I got a job on the Tiger High campus, working at the information center in the spring. I also got a raise at the hotel and more hours, mostly because the management was just lazy. I was putting in a good 20 plus hours at the information center, giving people directions, meeting all the new girls, other people, making connections on campus, then like 50 or so at the hotel and 18 hours of classes. I would hit up the clubs at least 5 nights a week, after work, before work, or whenever. I was driving like $250 to $400 a night in bar tabs alone. I felt like I knew everybody. And I did, but none of my family, friends, or coworkers had a clue. I was working one night in the hotel, and a pimp who made a habit of slapping this one girl around a little too much walked in. I asked why he was doing that shit. He said, "If she don't get paid, I don't get paid, and you don't get paid." He pulled out a gun and pointed it to my head. I just looked him dead in the eye and said, "Bitch, hold up a second. I got a call coming in." He said, "What, you calling the cops? Punk, you better." Then I dropped a name for the first time, who we will call Big Mo. He said, "How do you know him?" "Fuck, never mind. My bad, dude. Don't tell him. Please don't." He then emptied out his wallet, and I never saw his face in my hotel again. Now, Big Mo was an old acquaintance that I met a while back when I was in that mental rehabilitation hell for a few nights in my early teens. He had rep, and he was helping me out in the supply and demand department for the hotel. But in helping him transition from Mo to Big Mo, I picked up a scar under my right eye, a broken hand, and respect for not taking any shit. 2 days after we were last in lockdown together, when I was in middle school, I found out that a prison guard who had been giving us shit had a cousin in my class. After the cousin said some shit to me, I grabbed a pencil and stuck it a good 2 inches in between his shoulder and neck. He didn't die, but my rep for being crazy grew. I hadn't seen Big Mo in a long time, but by chance we met up one night at a strip club. Just shooting the breeze while some fat chick was dancing, he noticed my scar, and we started swapping stories of shit that had been going down. He informed me that I didn't owe him shit, and he would provide the goods for me at cost. I could keep the profits, and if I had any problems, just to give him a ring. So after the club, we went back to his pad in a part of town white people don't go. Hell, the damn cops wouldn't go there after dark. I met his crew, who said hello with about 14 AK-47s pointed at me. All of a sudden, they heard the words, "This is my boy. You touch him or his business, you answer to me." Well, 2 blunts and a bottle of Hennessy later, we had it set up, and we wouldn't meet again unless shit hit the fan. His boys became my errand bitches if I needed them. Still, everybody who knew me thought I was a guy just going through the motions of life. My grandparents were proud of my grades and happy I was going to the Jewish Student Union. The double life wasn't hard most of the time. I just made phone calls and got money. My GPA was at all-time highs. My wallet would get fat and then slim, spent on concerts, road trips, you name it. Then I got a shock that flipped my world upside down about a month before my 21st birthday. Chapter 9, The Death of a Man. So there I was, with spring break approaching, on a Wednesday night out at the local comedy club heckling the redneck on stage. I left in a good mood. I got home and my mother was all, "Sit down." "Who died?" "Your father. Well, on a business trip to Milan, and we're waiting for the consul to call." I just grabbed the keys, called up Lunchbox, and told him my dad died. We drove around for a time, then went to CK's coffee shop and sat there for a while. I told him, "I'm not sure how to feel. Apparently, it's going to take a while for the body to get shipped back." My dad was coming back to America, frozen in a block of ice. It was very weird for me. I wasn't sure how I was supposed to feel. Not sure if I needed to cry or dance. I had mixed emotions, despite the fact I could count on my hands the number of times I actually saw him. I never hated him. I didn't know him well enough for that. I knew he was a funny guy who pulled pranks for kicks. We never really talked. I mean, my mother had severed that relationship when I was younger. She always forced him into a corner if we were to talk to him. I remember the time he promised me and my brother that we were going to go to Disneyland. Like kids get, we were super hyped and jumping up and down in the car. He said we were going in a little while. When a little while took its time arriving, my brother and I put the car in neutral and pushed it out of the garage and down past about 4 or 5 houses. He was so pissed, but he couldn't help but laugh when we finally told him where the car was. It was one of those see you when I see you relationships. I regret it now that I didn't force myself to call more often, but it wasn't my style or his. I always just reckoned one day we would have a relationship and stuff. I kind of always wanted to live in California, but never could pull it off for too long. I remember the time when I was at my cousin's wedding in San Francisco. My dad took me to a lesbian bar after I showed him my fake ID with my picture and my brother's information on it. He told me he had a lot in common with lesbians. I found nothing wrong with that. We joked around for a bit, but it wasn't even like buddy-buddy stuff. We just didn't do that father-son crap. I've known that since I was 5. I don't blame him. If you had to deal with my mother, you would completely understand. Anyway, after a couple hours, I went to class and imagined pulling the, I know spring break is next week, but my father died in Italy, and I'm not sure when his body will get back, and the funeral is going to be in California, so I'll be gone for a couple of weeks and probably come back with a 10 card to get the grade. Yeah, that's right. I got sympathy without showing emotion. Now that's the stuff that dreams are made of, kids. My professors heard how screwed up my family was and figured I was normal under those conditions. So I got down to Florida for some fun in the sun, and under the circumstances, I was filled with anticipation and anxiety over all the crap associated with what might come next. My stepmother, mother, brother, aunt, and uncles, everybody was just making it worse. My brother had a wedding for like 500 people to cater on the weekend of the funeral, so shit got complicated when it came to the funeral planning. It was to be a private ceremony, so would it be ceremony then burial later, or burial and then ceremony? Were we going to bury him just to dig him up the next day? I was going nuts dealing with emotional stuff that I had been trying to shrug off for years. Nobody understood me, and finally I just booked my ticket to California on my own, and my mother started yelling at my aunt to pay for the ticket. What the hell? Why was I going to be a bargaining chip again to try to squeeze money out of other people? So this is the tricky part. I landed at John Wayne Airport, and my cousin picks me up. I had known for years that he smoked the chronic, as they called it back in the day. I had been offered before, but never took it. I had tried the crap I was peddling once or twice, and just kind of figured it was all the same. Well, this time, he was like, no pressure. And I said, yeah, I need it. The chronic hit me hard that night, and that was the first time I'd used drugs to cope. And it worked. I got a hold of some Valium the next few days and needed every bit of it. The funeral arrangements were such a clusterfuck that my brother, in the end, just said fuck it and got out of the process. So I was left with being the good son, trying to defend my brother for not coming when I couldn't, and even to this day, don't forgive him. I remember dropping a picture of my niece in the grave after the crowd had left. I was an emotional zombie again. It was like lithium minus the drool. I couldn't cry. In fact, I couldn't cry at the fact I couldn't cry. That was the saddest part. Then I had to hear people praise a man I didn't know, and hear about how great of a man he was. I don't know if I was ready for that, yet there I was alone, an outsider. So upon returning to Memphis, I asked Big Mo for some of the good stuff for me. And that's a mistake when you start hitting your stash. Kids, don't ever get caught up in that circle. You got to keep them separated. I started slipping. While I didn't run into debt while smoking, I was just kind of breaking even. At one point, I started dipping into my own pocket for cash. I took that as a sign to lay off the green, and maybe hitting the bottle just came more naturally. It wasn't a good cycle, but hell, I thought I was having fun. The rest of my spring was kind of cool. Friends said I was changing. I guess so. I started mixing misery and gin, and like Merle Haggard said, it looks like you're having a good time, but any fool can see that this honky-tonk heaven makes you feel like hell, or something like that. I coasted the rest of that semester and the summer semester. I was just wasted, but on the outside I was doing great with a 3.5 GPA. I couldn't pass the required foreign languages or Reconstruction history due to my anti-federalist stance on the Constitution, so I found a loophole. If I took public affairs, I wouldn't have to deal with the depressing facts about the aftermath of the War of Northern Aggression. I played little games during class with the big words on the board and, come the midterm, had a few too many gin and tonics. I got to writing my essay, and the professor called me out, asking if I had been drinking. I said that I had one or two, and he grabbed my essay and started grading it, nodding his head. Then I left, showing up next class, and he said, "Unfortunately, somebody was listening in class and screwed up the curve for everybody else." He told me, had I not had one or two drinks, I might not have had 5 or 6 misspelled words, and that's why I only got a 97. To top it off, he gave me the option of not coming to class or taking any more tests. I couldn't help it. I enjoyed his rants on worthless bureaucrats, and all I did was question anybody thinking they knew better than me. Who the hell are they to tell me what's right or wrong? They don't know me. I'm just a motherfucking survivalist, doing what I got to do to get by, and I'm doing it my way. I spent my free time shooting pool, beers, and espresso, sleeping 2 hours at a time at most. Moonshine for some events, and the chronic for every movie I saw, just trying to find a hero or a role model. I would be remiss not to mention some women, but look, I figured out a long time ago, women dig dudes who treat them like shit. So, starting shit in bars by grabbing chicks' asses and then buying them shots seemed to work for me. The more you know. I worked at a hotel and had keys to an office on campus with a couch. Respect! And that's where we're going to leave off for this episode. So you see, we start off really rough with the early childhood and the trauma involved there, and now we're getting into more hijinks. Old Jeff mixing it up with the underworld, with women, with professions, and getting out and about. So I told you the content would get lighter, but his sense of alienation from his father, that was real, and he's capturing that in this autobiography. And what do you do in that situation? You're at a funeral for the guy who helped make you, and you barely know anything about him. And all these people around you are talking about him. And the most he could really say would be, okay, I suppose. Good to know. Well, if you have thoughts or comments on this reading, please drop those in the chat. Now we're going to respond to them all. And if you enjoyed this, share it around, like it, subscribe, and come back for the next installment. And so, my dear friends, that's what I got for now. Until next time, I wish you nothing but the best. And as in the first 2 parts of this series, as I go through it, I am editing the mistakes that were present in the original manuscript. Because believe me, I've seen my reviews of other people's products, and I pick at their mistakes relentlessly. Well, guess what, folks? You didn't beat me to fixing my own mistakes. Therefore, you missed out. You missed your chance to get the dagger at me and twist it and go, "Ha! How do you like it, fat boy?" But by all means, if you do want to read and review my written works, feel free.